literally.
How they put out the camera footage.
Yeah, in this day and age of AI, nope.
Yeah, come on, fam.
Nope.
And also, it's a jail, so it'd be the same shit all day, every day. You could just pick a different day and change the date.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, that Tuesday I was definitely wearing my cop uniform and sitting at the desk outside of the jail cell. Like,
look, at 12:09.
We start today with President Donald Trump's firm support for his embattled Attorney General Pam Bondi following the MAGA revolt over her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Trump took to social media last night to say Bondi is doing a, quote, fantastic job and that his administration should all be, quote, one team. He posed the question, what's going on with my boys and in some cases, gals? It seems Trump is witnessing the continued meltdown in the MAGA movement over the Trump administration's failure to deliver all the conspiratorial goods in the Epstein investigation. After years of being fed a steady diet of conspiracy theories involving a potential who's who of Epstein's sex trafficking clients and supposed Epstein murder, including bolstering coming from within the administration itself, they were left with the underwhelming truth that none of it may be real. And they have not been taking it well, like at all. Just listen to how it was received during the conservative group Turning Point USA summit over the past 48 hours.
How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
What I'm getting at is at some point, we want answers at some point.
Yeah, answer the questions. That's it. Who went to Epstein Islands? Who specifically went on the plane? Who stayed for more than a night?
I don't think they're telling us the truth about Epstein. I think that guy was involved in something nefarious that implicates a whole lot of people.
I will not rest until we go full Jan 6 committee on the Jeffrey Epstein files and every single client that was associated with this thing has an FBI agent at their door on their phone going after them the same way they went after the Jan 6ers.
Like someone told them Santa doesn't exist. Joining us now, Anthony Coley, former director of the Office of Public Affairs at the Department of Justice and former senior advisor to Merrick Garland, and Heath Mayo, founder of the pro-democracy anti-authoritarian group.
Today, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino apparently did not show up to work. And at this point, we really have no idea if he will be back at work on Monday, as I was just saying to Chris. And if not, whether he's gone for good or whether anyone else from this Trump-era soap opera will be exiting with him. Who knows? We'll see. And if there's anything we learn over the next hour, and you never know, we may, we will be sure to let you know, I promise.
This is truly unusual breaking news. You know the breaking news animation. You know sometimes the news is big, significant, serious. This one is unusual. A major escalation in what is increasingly a kind of political, quiet, peaceful civil war, but a civil war of political proportions for MAGA over these Epstein files. And it's roiling the Trump administration at quite literally the highest levels. Sources detailing the ongoing clash over a fight that could cost someone their job. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi clashing with the FBI #2 official Dan Bongino. As everybody who follows these kind of stories knows, technically the AG oversees the FBI, but if you remember Comey or other strong-willed FBI officials, when you're at that #1, #2 level, they sometimes fight with the DOJ. Sources say Bongino is so upset about all this, he's saying maybe he'll just leave, which would be a very quick tenure, by the way, and he would be leaving in a sort of protest or criticism of Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Other outside agitators, including Tucker Carlson, saying she's lost confidence, maybe she has to go. He was not at work today, reportedly. Sources also say Bondi and Bongino got into a heated clash Wednesday in a high-level meeting with him, her, FBI Director Patel, and Donald Trump's #1 person who tracks all this stuff and makes the big staffing decisions, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, who, of course, also ran the Victoria's campaign. Axios has a report on this where Pam says her piece, Dan says his piece, didn't end on friendly terms. Bongino left angry. And you don't need to be a scholar of reporting or Watergate level intrigue to know somebody in this small meeting is leaking this stuff to Axios if it's true. A source close to Bongino saying he ain't coming back. Out of control furious is the other quote. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired, said someone who, again, according to that reporting, spoke with Bongino. By the way, hire podcasters and right-wing media figures to run major parts of the government, and you may find major parts of the government are being leaked on and run like another piece of podcast content. I'll come back to how some of this does swirl around MAGA content. Other parts of it, of course, are serious when you think about the victims in the original Epstein case. All of this, though, occurred because the DOJ has fallen short of the pledges that people around Trump, including Bondi, made.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump's administration is facing a full rebellion from the MAGA faithful, the most diehards, the people that spend all day online talking about Donald Trump. Some of the president's most strident supporters are furious at his Department of Justice after concluded there would be no further disclosures of Jeffrey Epstein-related documents, and that, basically, everyone should just drop it and move on. This comes after his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, basically spent months hyping some sort of big reveal from the Department of Justice. Epstein, of course, the disgraced New York financier who died in federal custody back in 2019 while facing child sex trafficking charges related to what prosecutors says was a years-long scheme to abuse young women. A new memo from the DOJ reiterates the department's position that Epstein was not murdered, noting, quote, after a thorough investigation, FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell.
Trump voters rise up on the internet in full revolt.
All right, we have a major vibe shift alert. Trump supporters in the crowd at Charlie Kirk's latest event were basically booing and spitting on the administration throughout the event due to their Jeffrey Epstein cover-up. Trump did not realize what he was stepping in, and now it's blown up in his face. Just to lay the groundwork a little bit, Charlie Kirk holds these events for his Turning Point USA apparatus. And the events in and of themselves are actually pretty clever. He weaves together a bunch of right-wing politicians, media figures, celebrities, people who aren't even involved in politics to create this big convention where they have normal people that aren't paying attention to politics come to see celebrities. But then while they're seeing celebrities, Tucker Carlson is speaking, and young students are there, older people are there, people of all demographics are there to hear the same propaganda. The point is, we need stuff like that on our side. Maybe it's something we should be working on actively. I want to start off with this clip of Tucker Carlson saying, this is not really the administration I voted for.
We knew that. But the fact that the U.S. government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my question seriously and instead said, case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist, was too much for me. And I don't think the rest of us should be satisfied with that. And by the way, let me just...
It gets worse. Later on, Megyn Kelly asked if anyone's happy, and the crowd begins to boo. But you know, when I said vibe shift, I really meant vibe shift, because you see a lot of the conservative figures who are wired to be conspiratorial now aiming the conspiracies at the Trump admin. I want to show you this clip of Tucker Carlson. Don't worry, I'm not all of a sudden agreeing with Tucker Carlson or whatever, but I do think that he, Charlie Kirk, and the other right-wing MAGA figures were saying some really interesting things.
I think Jeffrey Epstein was a sexual predator. Look, I want them to release everything. Every adult who was culpable and responsible, I think the public should know.
You think President Trump has something to do with Epstein, with your brother being killed?
I wouldn't write that off.
I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN, promo code Destiny, to get...
Donald Trump and his administration is today left holding the bag after a conspiracy theory that has animated and juiced his base and fueled the rise of multiple key members of his innermost cabinet suddenly and spectacularly imploded. On Monday, a Justice Department memo, unsigned, undated, and unaddressed to anyone so as to ostensibly minimize any attention to it, concluded that disgraced financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide, and that there was no client list filled with...
Joining us now, staff writer with The Atlantic and MSNBC political analyst Ashley Parker, New York Times Justice Department reporter Glenn Thrush, and former chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign, and MSNBC.
So who's going to quit first? Is it going to be the FBI director, Kash Patel? Is it going to be the deputy FBI director, Dan Bongino? Is it going to be the attorney general, Pam Bondi, who seems to be digging in her heels? It is a cluster, you know what, and all things are imploding in the Trump regime right now, in the FBI and the DOJ, after that memo came out from Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer turned number 2, the deputy attorney general.
Segment of the American public, and specifically younger people who are suffering right now. The U.S. economy right now is a disaster. The ability to buy a house, rates are very high from the Fed. That's one thing he's correct about Trump, especially on the Federal Reserve, about high interest rates, about the fact that we have like a collapse of social trust. I spent a long time talking about gambling. We're watching extractive industries get richer and richer on the backs of a lot of both. Epstein was a conduit of high stakes money laundering for things like, not Iran-Contra specifically, but let's say like funneling arms from Israel to Iran. This was also how he met eventually Robert Maxwell and became ensnared with his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell. The money laundering is actually more key to his intelligence
arms
rules.
From Israel to Iran?
Well, this was a key part of the Maxwell story. Robert Maxwell is a very sketchy character, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. People focus on the tabloid. That's actually not all what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is the fact that he's this Czechoslovakian Orthodox Jew who like escapes from the Nazis. He eventually becomes a highly decorated soldier. Actually, I think he won the second highest medal in the UK for his operations during World War II. From that point forward, becomes very, very enmeshed with the Zionist community inside of the UK and propping up the newly formed state of Israel. From that point forward, he basically serves as a high stakes, like almost an entity in and of itself. That's the way that Daryl Cooper has described him, is like a sovereign wealth fund almost, which with together brokers all kinds of cutout deals, between Israel and Iran. And actually, Epstein himself, when he was just 28 years old, flew on a private jet, I believe, to the Pentagon with somebody who we know is directly linked to these, previous intelligence operations and funneling money and weapons into many of these conflicts. So this stretches back decades, and that's a very, very important part of the story. So please just do not tell me that there's no part of a systematic blackmail campaign. It's so preposterous, and it actually just makes me want to tear my hair out. And I guess the only good news is that, just like with the Kennedy assassination, we do all know the truth. The Kennedy assassination broke this country. I really believe that. I know you do as well. But it broke something even more fundamental and opened up what they call the credibility gap under the Johnson administration, where prior to the 1960s, Americans trusted their government. It was actually a beautiful thing. I mean, it was bad in some ways as well. We were taken advantage of by the Dulles brothers and a lot of other horrible things they were doing in the 1950s. But it was beautiful in the sense of social and of civic trust. Yeah. And there's something was broken with that, with the Kennedy assassination. And then it was extended, of course, into the war in Vietnam. And we've never been the same since. And all the Trump administration elected on the backs of a lot of these people who want more transparency in government, saw a lot of this corruption, to just turn around and do the same thing. It's just too much. It's too much for me, and I think it's too much for a lot of other people.
So we want to brag, but this has got to be the most pro-dog podcast on the entire internet. They're almost always dogs, actually, just off camera. So dogs are non-negotiable.